Don Ma. Today, we have a number of stories for you, and including this first story, Canada ready to resume trade talks with the U.S. again, why President Donald Trump ended all negotiations earlier. Has China been complying with the 2020 trade deal signed with the U.S.? A new investigation by the Trump administration aims to find out. New York Attorney General Letitia James pleads not guilty today in her bank fraud case, what she's asking the judge to prohibit from the news media. The United States reports striking another vessel attempting to smuggle drugs from South America to the U.S. The details of the latest attack this morning. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy speaks at Philadelphia International Airport as the government shutdown enters its 24th day. Duffy says air traffic controllers are continuing to work without pay. Tropical storm Melissa could strengthen into a powerful hurricane. The storm is expected to hit Jamaica and the southern regions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic through the weekend.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
And thank you for joining us today. New York Attorney General Letitia James has entered pleas of not guilty at her Norfolk, Virginia federal court arraignment today. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
New York Attorney General Letitia James denied felony charges of bank fraud at her arraignment hearing on Friday. She pleaded not guilty to the fraud charges and a charge of making false statements to a financial institution. James is accused of attempting to defraud two financial institutions by falsely characterizing a three-bedroom property in 2020. According to the indictment, she claimed the Norfolk, Virginia property was a secondary residence, but it was an investment property that she never planned to live in. She allegedly mischaracterized its use to secure better terms on her mortgage. After the arraignment, James made brief remarks outside of the courthouse.
But this is not about me. This is about all of us. And about a justice system which has been weaponized. A justice system which has been used as a tool of revenge. This justice system which has been used as a tool of revenge. And a weapon against those individuals who simply did their job and who stood up for the rule of law. And a justice system which unfortunately is nothing being used as a vehicle of retribution.
Ahead of the arraignment on Thursday, James' attorney filed motions urging the court to oust prosecutor Lindsay Halligan and block her from revealing details of the case to the media. A trial is set for January 26th. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The United States continues attacking drug traffickers who are trying to smuggle narcotics into the United States. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth reported the latest strike this morning. Hegseth says the Department of War carried out a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel operated by Trendy Argua, a designated terrorist organization, trafficking narcotics in the Caribbean Sea. According to the Secretary of War, the vessel was traveling along a known trafficking route and carrying narcotics. The strike was reportedly conducted in international waters. 6 male narco-traffickers were aboard the vessel during the strike. They all died in the attack. Hegseth says no U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. The Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group is now embarking to international waters in Latin America to assist with the operations. The strike group includes a carrier air wing, a cruiser, and multiple destroyers. And at yesterday's roundtable event, a reporter questioned why Trump doesn't get Congress's approval to take out drug traffickers. Here's the president.
What a job you're doing. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay?
President Trump also spoke about China yesterday. Trump says the Chinese regime is smuggling fentanyl into the United States through Venezuela. The president says the aim is to bypass U.S. and Mexican controls.
So I'm meeting with President Xi, and I would say we have some big issues, like with the farmers and various other things, but the first question I'm going to be asking him about is fentanyl. And if you think about it, they make $100 million. Think of this. They make $100 million selling fentanyl into our country, $100 million. They lose $100 billion with the 20% tariff. So it's not a good business proposition. It's $100 billion approximately that they have to pay. That's a big penalty to make $100 million. So I think they want to. That's not a good sign.
Trump will meet Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping next week as part of a trip to Asia. The president departs for Malaysia late tonight and will also visit South Korea, where he will meet Xi next Thursday. FBI Director Kash Patel told lawmakers earlier this year he had spoken to counter-narcotics authorities in China. Patel urged them to restrict exports of more fentanyl precursor chemicals. The Chinese Ministry of Public Security in August added 7 chemicals to an export control list, 3 of them central to producing fentanyl. Secretary of State Marco Rubio continues his Israel visit today. Rubio addressed military forces this morning. He spoke about the International Gaza Security Force, which will be put in place under the current ceasefire agreement. Here's Rubio.
We haven't formed that force yet, so there's still work going on. There's a lot of countries that are offered to do it. Obviously, as you put together this force, it'll have to be people that Israel's comfortable, or countries that Israel's comfortable with as well.
Rubio added that the future of governance in Gaza still needs to be worked out among Israel and partner nations, but he made clear that it can't include the Hamas terrorist organization. According to Rubio, any potential role for the Palestinian Authority has yet to be determined. He traveled to Israel on Thursday with the goal of implementing President Trump's Gaza peace plan. Rubio arrived just after Vice President J.D. Vance's departure from the Middle East. And Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan also weighed in on the situation in Gaza. He says Turkey's military should join the Gaza Security Force while also playing an active role in the reconstruction of the enclave. NATO member Turkey is one of the most vocal critics of Israel's military action in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hinted that he'll be opposed to any role for Turkish security forces in the Gaza Strip. Erdogan also accuses Israel of violating the Gaza ceasefire deal. The Turkish president is calling on the United States and others to help stop the alleged violations, for example, through the use of sanctions. The holiday season is slowly but surely approaching, and the gridlock on Capitol Hill could affect people's travel plans. The Trump administration and Republican leaders in Congress yesterday warned that flight disruptions will increase as the government shutdown enters its 4th week. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports on that and other shutdown updates.
The White House yesterday warned that the ongoing government shutdown could cause delays for air travel as the holiday season approaches.
If the Democrats continue to keep the government closed, we fear there will be significant flight delays, disruptions, and cancellations in major airports across the country this holiday season.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt accused Democrats of playing political games.
And a senior Democrat aide said the party will not end the shutdown, quote, short of planes falling out of the sky.
At present, approximately 13,000 air traffic controllers and 50,000 TSA officers are working without being paid. October 28th will mark the controllers' first missed paycheck, which is expected to cause more absences among workers. The FAA yesterday said air traffic control staffing issues are delaying travel at airports in New York, Washington, Newark, and Houston. Staffing issues were reported at 10 different locations, and ground stops were issued at Houston, Bush, and Newark airports. Flights at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport were being delayed an average of 31 minutes, and delays at New York LaGuardia were averaging 62 minutes. A group representing mayors of more than 1,000 U.S. cities has urged the Agriculture Department to use emergency funds to cover food assistance benefits threatened by the shutdown. Tens of millions of Americans might not receive food stamps and other food aid in November because the shutdown, now the second longest in history, has kept Congress from funding the benefits. The nonpartisan U.S. Conference of Mayors sent a letter to Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins yesterday, urging the USDA to cover SNAP program November benefits. And lawmakers yesterday traded barbs over the ongoing shutdown.
It's ridiculous, and a lot of innocent people are being hurt. People are getting food stamps back in my state are no longer getting those, and this is supposed to be a safety net for them.
We will consider in good faith anything bipartisan that emerges from the Senate.
I would say to my Democrat colleagues, like, stop making people suffer. I mean, real people are suffering right now. Let's stop this. I mean, I don't get it. Stop that, and we'll work on the healthcare thing.
And on the state level, Governor Glenn Youngkin declared a state of emergency in Virginia yesterday to provide relief for residents at risk of losing federal food benefits next month.
Youngkin says over 850,000 residents in the state could lose benefits. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the annual inflation rate rose to its highest level since January. The agency said higher gasoline prices and housing costs account for the increase. According to data released today, the 12-month inflation rate climbed to 3% in September. That's up from 2.9% in August. Core inflation slowed to a smaller than expected 3% year over year from 3.1% the previous month. Core data excludes energy and food prices because of their volatility. The Social Security Administration says benefits and payments will increase 2.8% for 75 million Americans in 2026. Social Security retirement benefits will increase by an average about $56 per month starting in January. Over the last decade, the cost of living adjustment increase has averaged about 3%. The adjustment was 2.5% in 2025. The cost of living adjustment for retirees and disabled beneficiaries is financed by payroll taxes collected from workers and their employers. Social Security begins notifying recipients about their new benefit amount by mail starting in early December. President Trump says he is terminating all trade negotiations with Canada. It's after Canada launched a state-sponsored TV ad campaign opposing U.S. tariffs. The ad featured clips of the late President Ronald Reagan. We go now live to NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley. Jack, good to see you. What's President Trump saying about the ad?
Good to see you too, Don. Well, the president says that Canada's new campaign ad it's meant to interfere with an upcoming U.S. Supreme Court hearing on his administration's tariffs. The Supreme Court's hearing will decide the fate of Trump's tariffs on November 5th. Trump announced that he's ending trade talks with Canada late last night. And on Truth Social, he wrote this morning. You can see here Canada cheated and got caught. They fraudulently took a big buy ad saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs when he actually loved tariffs for our country and its national security. Canada is trying to illegally influence the United States Supreme Court in one of the most important rulings in the history of our country. Now, this is in response to a $75 million ad campaign sponsored by Ontario that came out earlier this month. It features clips from Ronald Reagan's 1987 address advocating for free trade. Here's a clip of that.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs.
Now, this ad campaign was criticized by the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation that says that this ad misrepresents Reagan's speech and that his comments were edited and taken out of context and even used without their permission. Now, the White House advisor Kevin Hassett says this morning that Trump ended the negotiations with Canada not just over this one ad, but it was a period of time of frustration with Canada's negotiating team that just seemed to be this ad is what pushed it over the edge. Here's Hassett this morning.
I think the frustration has built up over time. I've been involved in some of these negotiations, and the Canadians have been very difficult to negotiate with. And you look at all the countries around the world that we've made deals with, and the fact that we're now negotiating with Mexico separately reveals that it's not just about one ad, that there's frustration that's built up.
And Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says that Canada's ready to pick up negotiations with the U.S. when the U.S. is ready, but He said that there's been progress made on the U.S. tariffs with steel and aluminum. Take a look.
Our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions.
Now, this isn't the first time that the U.S. has ended trade talks with Canada. Back in June, Trump suspended talks after Canada imposed its digital services tax, impacting American companies like Amazon and Netflix. And then Canada canceled the talks, the tax 2 days later after Trump suspended the talks, and then the talks then resumed. But both Trump and Carney right now are heading to Asia, Malaysia, Japan, and then South Korea for the APEC summit. But it's unclear if they'll meet on the sidelines to come to an agreement. But we do know, however, that Trump is set to meet with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping to seek a trade deal. So trade talks are in the works on that summit. Don.
All right, Jack, thank you very much. And just to summarize, an ad featuring former President Ronald Reagan has brought trade talks between the U.S. and Canada to a grinding halt. President Trump said he has canceled negotiations with Canada. Over the ad released by the Ontario government, in it, Reagan speaks negatively about tariffs. And Trump suggested the ad was an attempt to interfere with the Supreme Court case on the administration's use of tariffs. Joining us is Diana, and she is a director at the Heritage Foundation. So Diana, to start off, what is your reaction to the president's decision to end negotiations in response to this ad?
Well, I'm sure that the negotiations are going to continue in due course. What we see with negotiations is that they go up and down, and I'm sure things are going to be headed in the right direction because both countries need each other. If you look at our energy platform, for example, we refine a lot of Canadian crude oil. The Canadians give us a discount on that and then send it back in terms of refined products and gasoline. We have light crude, they have sour, heavy crude. They're refined in the United States. So there's a lot of advantage between trade, between the United States and Canada. And I'm sure that these discussions are going to continue after this temporary blip.
But do you feel this, does this put a strain, at least to a certain degree, on the relationship between the U.S. and Canada that, President Trump says we're terminating all trade talks?
Well, he has said that in the past. I think one has to look past what President Trump says, what Prime Minister Carney say. I think we have to look past what they say and look at the end goal. And we also have to look in terms of whether tariffs are fair or not. We have China, which subsidizes its exports of goods in order to undercut Western countries. They are selling a car for about $21,000 in the UK called a Dolphin Surf. Costs more to produce this car than it does to sell it. And we need to focus on China and getting rid of Chinese components in our goods, making sure Chinese electric vehicles do not come into the United States. And I'm sure that President Trump's going to be discussing that when he meets with President Xi.
So Diana, I just want to focus a little bit longer on this relationship between the U.S. and Canada. It seems like you're optimistic that trade negotiations will continue. What needs to happen in order for these negotiations to resume?
Well, in the past, there's generally been some discussion between the leaders, some face-saving announcements, and then these discussions have continued. Look what happened with Switzerland when President Trump cut off negotiations. They were resumed. So the two countries are so closely interlocked. For example, Canada provides hydroelectric power to New England. New England is electricity. The electricity in New England is dependent on Canada. There is too much at stake for them not to make a deal. And I'm sure a deal is going to be made. And let me tell you, with these politicians, you cannot believe always what they say. You have to look past immediate words. You know how George Orwell defined diplomats? Good men sent abroad to lie for their country. There's a lot of words, but you have to look at what actions are going to happen.
Right. And we've seen President Trump, sort of flip-flop on tariffs as well. So we'll just have to wait and see on this what happens. So Diana, can I also get your view on what former President Reagan said about tariffs? What is the context here?
Well, back in the 1980s, most countries we traded with were on an even playing field. And President Reagan was talking about the benefits of free trade. Now, with China using subsidies to promote all its different industries, using slave labor in Xinjiang, building 2 coal-fired power plants a week while it says that is reducing emissions. I mean, China is a serious threat to world trade. And I think if President Reagan were alive today, he would realize that. Trade with China is not fair and it's not free.
Do you think this has the potential, at least, this latest development to perhaps push Canada closer to Beijing in terms of a trading partner?
Well, no one knows what's going to happen in the future, but we also need to look at non-tariff barriers. For example, Europe is putting up a lot of non-tariff regulatory barriers to American goods. It has the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which says that any company with more than $500 million in revenue has to declare its emissions, the emissions of its contractors, the emissions of its contractors' contractors, and has to reorient its operations towards net zero. This is an example of a non-tariff barrier to trade. We need to be focusing on taking down these non-tariff barriers to trade and having more trade on an even framework.
Okay, just one last question here, Diana. So the U.S., sees tariffs as sort of a national security issue, and it is using it to its own advantage. But I would also like to know, maybe you can comment on this, what is the right balance between using tariffs, but at the same time not pushing away allies?
Well, don't forget that there are tariffs on American goods. There are barriers to American chicken and meat and dairy coming into other countries. So to say that it is just the United States that wants tariffs and the other countries have no barriers at all does not make any sense. I mean, there's France that says it doesn't want the import of American cars because of the emissions caused by shipping. At the same time, France is exporting its vehicles by ship to South Africa, where it sells $47 million worth of cars every year. So they're concerned about shipping emissions from Ford, GM, Stellantis exporting to France, but not about their cars, their shipping emissions when they go to South Africa. It makes no sense. So these countries are fighting it out. They're all putting up barriers. President Trump is standing up for the American people, and that's why I'm sure that the dispute with Canada is going to be resolved at some point.
Okay, well, Diana, good to speak with you today. Thank you very much.
Great to speak to you.
The Trump administration is investigating if Communist China has complied with the Phase 1 trade deal signed in 2020. This comes less than a week before President Trump is set to meet with CCP leader Xi Jinping in South Korea. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer today announced an examination into whether China has fully implemented its commitments under the deal and what to do if it hasn't. He suggested that China appears not to have lived up to its commitments when it comes to non-tariff barriers, market access issues, and purchases of U.S. goods. Greer said that the investigation shows the Trump administration's resolve to hold China to its commitments and protect the American people. under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. The U.S. can impose tariffs in response to unfair trade practices by other nations. The Trump administration welcomes comments from U.S. industries and labor unions. A hearing on the matter is also scheduled for December 16th. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy speaks at Philadelphia International Airport as the government shutdown enters its 24th day. Duffy says air traffic controllers are continuing to work without pay. Stay tuned.
Did you know Mathis Home has been giving their customers the best styles and value for 65 years? Come celebrate with 65th anniversary savings on everything in the store. This set is a great deal. You get the modern trestle table with 4 comfy side chairs, the complete set for just $8.89. With over 100 dining sets in stock, you're sure to find the one just right for your family and get free delivery. Get your new dining room now with 65th anniversary savings at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
If joint pain from aging is slowing you down, Omega XL can help you get back in the saddle, just like it did for John Walsh.
Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. Got to be really fit to ride these horses. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL, and look what it's done. I feel better than I've felt in the last 30 years.
I'm Reve Walsh. I'm John Walsh's wife. I ride fox hunters, and sometimes I'm in the saddle for 3-5 hours at a time. A lot of work out here.
I wouldn't have been able to do this. Muck a stall, throw hay, do all the things that needs to be done on a ranch a couple years ago. But Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great.
Once you try it, you don't want to be without it. Makes a huge difference.
It does. Take it every single day, and you know, there's a benefit. It's made you a lot nicer to me.
If you've been living with pain, it's time to get this special offer, the Omega XL, the joint health supplement that millions have trusted for more than 20 years. Omega XL, it's sourced from the green-lipped mussel, exclusively found in the pristine waters of New Zealand, some of the cleanest waters on Earth. Omega XL, it's natural, drug-free, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research that show it really works. Try Omega XL today. Pick up your phone and call the number at the bottom of your screen right now for a special offer. Buy 1, get 2 free. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3, a value of more than $100. But call today and you pay only $39.95. That's a savings of more than 60%. Plus, it's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee.
Try it. You got nothing to lose.
Call or go online right now to get this special offer. 2 bottles of Omega XL plus Vitamin XL D3 for only $39.95. Call now.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy spoke at Philadelphia International Airport today as the government shutdown enters its 24th day. Duffy said air traffic controllers were continuing to work without pay.
As these controllers come to work, they have to pay for babysitters, child care. There's a whole host of bills that Americans have that they anticipate that paycheck is going to come in so they can meet those bills. And the stress level that our controllers are under right now, I think, is unacceptable.
Duffy stressed that air travel remained safe despite a controller shortage. The Transportation Secretary said that flight delays and cancellations could be expected. Duffy also blamed Democratic lawmakers for the shutdown, adding that they're continuing to get paid. Republicans and Democrats have been unable to reach an agreement since the government closed October 1st. According to FlightAware, more than 6,000 flights nationwide were delayed yesterday. The U.S. annual inflation rate rose to the highest level since January. The latest CPI report shows that inflation at nearly 3%, slightly higher than expected. Joining us to discuss is Jeffrey Tucker, the founder and president of the Brownstone Institute and senior economics columnist for the Epoch Times. And we have Michael Busler, an economist and public policy analyst and professor of finance at Stockton University. So to start off, Michael, I'll go to you here. How significant in your mind is this uptick?
Not significant at all. So when President Trump entered office, the inflation rate was 2.9%. We did get it down to 2.4. August jumped up to 2.9. In September, we got it 3%. If you look at the number, though, the core rate has been going down. Most of that increase, now the core rate excludes energy prices. Much of that increase last month was due to 2 refineries in California that were shut down, and it pushed up energy prices. But as we know, energy prices have started to come down. OPEC has increased production starting in the month of September, so that'll put downward pressure on price. And the U.S. is producing more oil per day now than ever, mostly as a result of President Trump's drill baby drill policy. So I expect in the coming months to see that inflation number drop down significantly. President Trump says by the middle of next year, oil prices may be down as low as $50 a barrel. That'll translate into about $2.50 a gallon for gasoline. So any upward pressure on price from the tariffs will be more than offset by falling energy prices, and the overall CPI will continue to go down.
So Jeffrey, Michael addressed my concerns, but maybe you can speak to it as well, because we're back to a 3 handle on inflation. Are we in an environment of slightly elevated inflation and a softening labor market as well?
I wish I was as confident as Michael. I'm not that worried about gas prices right now, and I agree that the Trump administration's policies on energy have been an improvement. I mean, a dramatic improvement, really, in gas prices and energy generally. So I'm not worried about energy prices driving it. What I'm really worried about is the general trend. I've been written this for Epoch Times many, many times. The inflation tends to come in waves. Our last big experience in the 1970s went in 3 waves. Each time the Fed thought they had conquered inflation, lowered interest rates, and kicked off another wave of inflation until it culminated in the late 1970s. So if you think about the wave that was kicked off with the quantitative easing in 2020, we've been through a really dramatic inflation over the last 4 years that is anywhere between, I don't know, depending on the good or service, it could be as high as 50%, but as low as 20%, but maybe overall it averages at about 25, maybe 30%. It's hard to say. But the problem is that when you look at monetary aggregates right now, they've now exceeded what was their previous peak from 3 years ago. And I'm just not sure that it's all been washed out yet. And all of the policy pressures in Washington are towards lower and lower rates, which is only going to lead to a more expansionary monetary policy. The reason for that policy pressure is, of course, financing the exorbitant debt, which is completely out of control. So I am not as confident, and today I have to say it rattled me a little bit. I don't want to live in a world with even with a 3% inflation target. I'd like to see it drop back down to what it has been historically, 2%. That would be really nice, and I'll just be much more comfortable when that day arrives. Hopefully it does arrive, as your guest predicts, later this year,
right,
or later in the spring.
Okay, so Michael, if we look at all the data up to this point, what has been the trajectory of inflation?
So it peaked in June of 2022 at 9%, 9.1%, continued downward, got stuck around 3, and then dropped down to 2.4. Now the last 4 or 5 months, it's inched back up again for a number of things. But the underlying causes of inflation are being mitigated. The huge government deficit has caused a lot of inflation. President Trump knocked it from a little over $2 trillion per year to in fiscal 2025 down to $1.8 trillion. And it should continue to go down further as, although it's extremely difficult to cut government spending, as we're seeing. But President Trump is doing what he can to get government spending down. He's increased tax revenue from the tariffs, so the deficit should continue to go down. The other reasons we had inflation were extremely high energy prices, and those are coming down. If you bought gasoline recently, you probably paid a lot less this time than you did the last time or two when you bought. So energy prices are coming down. And during 2021 and 22, for some reason, the Federal Reserve kept expanding the money supply by through their bond buying program and purchasing a lot of the government debt. They've stopped that. And they kept interest rates near zero during that whole time period. Now, obviously, they've changed that too. I believe the interest rates today are too high. They're in a restrictive level. The federal funds rate up around 4% is restrictive. Most economists say if you keep it at 3.25, it's neutral. Anything less than that is stimulative. I think there's plenty of room for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. I think they should have cut them 50 basis points last time. They're likely going to cut them 25 basis points next week. I think that should be a 50 basis point cut. The jobs numbers were very weak. And for the last 2.5 years, they were overstated because we had someone in charge of the Bureau of Labor Statistics who didn't seem to understand how inferential statistics work. And she kept giving us numbers that were inflated. We need to stimulate the economy now. I'm not worried. I know my colleague here is worried somewhat, but I'm not worried about the inflation rate. I'm more worried about the low employment numbers and the low numbers of jobs that have been created really for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jeffrey,
Yeah.
so Jeffrey, since he brought it up, interest rates, how do you think this latest report is going to affect the central bank's interest rate decision?
Well, I mean, just to make a really obvious point, the 3% inflation actually lowers the real interest rate, right? So in real terms, interest rates are not actually that high. Historically, they're still low in real terms. They're usually not expressed that way, but it's true. You have to factor in inflation when you consider the interest rate. So they're not high. And I think that right now is a very risky time to be cutting interest rates. As for the jobs numbers, yeah, what a disaster. We've been through 2 or 3 years of wacky, wild, insane jobs numbers that never made any sense. And we're hopefully going to see a little more reality introduced into the jobs numbers so we can get a better picture of where we are. You know, my concern is not just about energy prices, but grocery prices too, and beef prices. You're starting to see these strange inflationary pressures just pop up in very weird places. Politically, I think this is potentially very dangerous for Trump. And I really do think that people who wish this administration well need to get serious about this. Inflation could destroy this entire term if it comes back, and nobody knows for sure what's around the corner. But I just extreme caution right now in lowering interest rates. I think is warranted, especially given all the price pressures that are pertaining to particular goods as a result of the trade wars. Now, just to be clear, I don't think that Trump's trade policies have really contributed substantially to inflation. So contrary to what everybody in the New York Times says, I don't believe that. It's not really true yet. But nonetheless, the trade problems could mitigate against a relaxation of prices in certain sectors. And that's something to consider. So I really do think the Trump administration needs to prioritize keeping a lid on inflation right now. And unfortunately, that is inconsistent with continued pressure on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. I'd like to see them at this level. Let the yield curve flow out very naturally. Let the Fed clean up its balance sheet once and for all, get on a normal track. And I think that'll give us the best prospects for fixing not only the job market, but economic growth generally.
All right, so Michael, we also got news today that an estimated 75 million Americans will get a 2.5, or rather 2.8% increase in monthly Social Security benefits. And of course, as you know, the Social Security cost of living adjustment is tied to the CPI report. So I want to ask you, does the real world experience of inflation for Americans at the grocery store match that of the official data? And how far will this 2.8% increase go at the grocery store?
Well, by the time the year is over, the next month or two, I think the inflation rate will probably end up the year right around that 2.8% figure. So if Social Security recipients get that 2.8% increase, it should balance out overall. However, there are certain things that people on fixed incomes purchase, and then people that are have closer to the median income purchase. So it depends on where the senior citizens are living and whether they have kind of a fixed payment there, if they have a home that they own. They're not going to worry about housing costs going up. Food prices are an issue. As was pointed out, beef prices are sky high. I went to buy beef last week, and I just couldn't believe the price. Now, much of that has to do with Trump cutting off imports from Brazil. Now he's trying to make it up with imports from Argentina. I'm not sure how the cattle ranchers in the U.S. will react to that. Not very, very positively. But people that are on fixed income, in order to stay even, they need an increase in what they get equal to the average inflation rate, which they're getting. So overall, it should not be that much of a burden to people on Social Security.
Okay, so Jeffrey, there's another thing I wanted your guys' comments on. The U.S. Trade Office now launching an investigation into China's compliance with the Phase 1 trade deal. What do you expect this investigation will find, Jeffrey?
I think it's going to find something really terrible. I mean, China has been involved in, as they say, stealing trade secrets for a very long time. This is not an unknown fact. I mean, what's unusual is that the Trump administration is trying to do something about it. Trade relationships with China continue to break down, and I don't really expect to see any real progress on that front. I think it's only going to get worse. And I'm concerned about that from the point of view of an American consumer in the short term. That could actually lead to some regrettable consequences for American consumers, and sad. On the other hand, something has to be done to reset this relationship with China. I don't think that anybody has any doubt about that.
Michael, final comments here.
China needs us far more than we need them. And if we continue to place high tariffs on their goods and they can't sell them to the U.S., they'll try to sell them around the world. There's not enough demand in the world to pick it up. We're at the advantage here. The problem that this investigation in 2019, President Trump signed a trade agreement with China that they agreed to buy so much things, mostly farm goods. And then they did in 2020. And then when the new administration got in, they stopped buying the goods, and the new administration didn't do anything about it. So now we're looking into it, and we're saying, look, China, you didn't live up to your agreement here, and they do have a history of not fully living up to all of their agreements. President Trump will be much firmer with them on these next agreements. The Chinese economy is not doing well. It's built a lot on debt. Most of the real estate expansion was on debt. They're having a lot of problems there, a lot of defaults. Their economy is slowing. We don't get, I don't think, accurate data on growth numbers from China, but the people I talk to seem to tell me that the Chinese economy is in very poor position, and they can't afford to lose all of the trade with the U.S. Much of the sanctions that we put on China did not affect prices in the U.S., meaning they absorbed the tariffs. They can't continue to operate and lose the sales to the U.S. So I think when Trump meets with Xi, I think next week or the week after, next week, I think you'll see some kind of an agreement come out of that. and it will favor the U.S. I don't know why China, out of the clear blue, started to do with these rare earth minerals, saying we're not going to sell them to everybody, you have to apply. For us, everything was going along fairly well, from what I understand, until China, out of the blue, did that, and it upset the Trump administration. So they'll talk about that, and Trump has already started to look for other sources for those rare earth minerals, mining them here in the U.S., an agreement with Australia, an agreement with Ukraine. So we're less dependent in the long run with China. China needs to make a deal with us before too long, or they're really going to be hurting, in my opinion.
All right, gentlemen, I think we can leave it there for today's conversation. Really appreciate you guys coming on.
Sure.
Always my pleasure.
Nice to hear. Thank you.
Police arrested a man who pointed a knife at them in front of the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo today, just a few days before President Trump's visit. Stay tuned for that after this quick break.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how sketch is me? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes, look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you have to get it trending. Right, Backpack Kid?
Let's do it.
First, invite your kid to do the vape talk. Let's try this. All right.
Why is he here?
Yeah, I gotta get it trending, honey.
Come on.
To the left. To the right. Let's go.
Oh, honey, can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
I see a lot of your friends vaping.
Visit talkaboutVaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I am blind.
I think you're really gonna like it. I hope so. Yeah.
I know this road is there for me. There is a long way.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
Ways down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know it's there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
Ukrainian President Zelensky urged allies to supply his nation with long-range weapons to strike deeper into Russia. His allies are discussing how to finance Ukraine over the coming years, with debate and concern over using frozen Russian assets. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky meets British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in London. It comes ahead of a Coalition of the Willing meeting where allies discuss ways to support Ukraine. Zelensky called for long-range missiles to strike deeper into Russia.
Everything Putin does is an attempt to delay new forms of pressure. We must create in Russia a will to negotiate.
Ukraine uses its own weapons to hit energy and military facilities deep inside Russia. Zelensky has been seeking long-range Tomahawk missiles from the United States to increase pressure on Moscow, but has not yet obtained them. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer urged Ukrainian allies to use frozen Russian assets to strengthen Ukraine's hand for any future peace talks.
I think we need to agree to finish the job on Russia's sovereign assets and unlock billions to help finance Ukraine's defense.
European Union leaders agreed on Thursday to meet Ukraine's pressing financial needs for the next 2 years, but stopped short of endorsing the plan to use frozen Russian assets due to Belgian concerns. Moscow has promised a painful response if the Russian assets are seized. At a press conference, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said there are details to work out over how to finance reparations for Ukraine.
We have to work in a way that we have a solution before Christmas Eve, so we are able to ensure that we can finance Ukraine for the next years.
She said a consensus must be reached to provide Ukraine with the much-needed funds. On Wednesday, President Trump announced sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil companies. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said this shows Trump is absolutely committed to ending the war.
The sanctions that the US has placed against Russia's largest oil companies will starve them of revenue and significantly increase the pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table.
Putin said the sanctions on oil companies were an unfriendly act, but would not significantly affect the Russian economy. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Washington's most wanted Chinese drug lord was finally arrested in Cuba and is now waiting to be extradited to the United States through Mexico. The U.S. government is accusing him of supplying fentanyl to the two biggest Mexican cartels and building a multi-continental criminal network whose operations spread across America. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more.
The Chinese narco broker's name is Zhang Dongji, also known as Brother Wang. He was born in Beijing. U.S. authorities say Zhang had built a massive narco-traffic network, which directly supplies to two Mexican cartels for nearly a decade. The Trump administration designated the two cartels as terrorist groups earlier this year. The U.S. government says Zhang's operatives are scattered across states like California, Georgia, as well as Latin America, Europe, and Asia. This way, Zhang's organization smuggled nearly 4,000 pounds of fentanyl and over 2,000 pounds of cocaine from Mexico into the U.S. Such a massive amount of fentanyl can kill approximately 900 million people, almost triple the U.S. population. The Trump administration has doubled down its pressure on Beijing to stop fueling the opioid crisis, especially fentanyl, and even slapped 20% tariffs on Chinese goods as punishment. But despite the tariff in place, U.S. federal agencies last month intercepted 1,300 barrels of precursor chemicals shipped from China before they could poison Americans.
These 1,300 barrels were shipped from Shanghai, China to Mexico. We intercepted these precursors on the high seas, and now the Sinaloa cartel will not be able to use them to make methamphetamines. And the bottom line is this. Whenever there is an effort on the part of foreign terrorist organizations to create drugs that are killing Americans, we will seize them, whether it's on the high seas or whether it's in the country or a foreign country.
Back to Zhang's story, the drug trafficking business is only half of his business model. As an operator of Zhang's, who was arrested in the U.S., disclosed, after Zhang's Mexican operatives collected money from drug dealers, they used Zhang's shell companies based in China and the U.S. for money laundering. U.S. officials say Zhang has 150 shell companies and almost 200 bank accounts. An indictment against Zhang says he laundered $20 million in the U.S. within 1 year. Court documents show Zhang tends to start bank accounts with reputable banks like Bank of America, JP Morgan, or Wells Fargo. But what's really raising eyebrows is Zhang's connection to the Chinese Communist Party. The Bureau reported that Zhang once flew into Canada's Vancouver back in 2017, and he saved contacts from the Chinese embassy and consulate in Ottawa and Vancouver in his phone. Now, the U.S. has never been this close to bringing the Chinese drug kingpin to justice after he managed to escape the last arrest. Media reports say Zhang will be extradited to the U.S. as soon as he touches Mexican soil, after the Cuban authorities finish their current interrogation.
And for more exclusive China news and in-depth analysis, tune in to China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on NTD. Police arrested a man who pointed a knife at them in front of the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo today. Japan is ramping up security ahead of President Trump's visit in a few days. A man was taken into custody after pointing a knife, a kitchen knife that is, at anti-riot police officers on the street. During the arrest, one officer was injured in his right heel by the suspect's knife. The man's motive was not immediately known. The incident comes days before Trump's planned trip to Japan beginning October 27th. He will meet with Emperor Naruhito and newly elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. The Tokyo Police Department has mobilized up to 18,000 personnel to bolster security for the visit. Japan has seen multiple attacks on high-profile politicians in recent years. Former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was killed by a homemade gun in 2022, and a failed bomb attack targeted then Premier Fumio Kishida in 2023. Forecasters are warning that Tropical Storm Melissa could strengthen into a hurricane. The storm was expected to hit Jamaica and the southern regions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic through the weekend. The U.S. National Hurricane Center reported that Melissa was located about 215 miles southeast of Kingston, Jamaica, and about 250 miles southwest of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. The storm had maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour. Up to 20 inches of rain is forecast for portions of southwestern Haiti and eastern Jamaica through Monday. Up to 12 inches was expected for the remainder of southern Haiti and for the southern Dominican Republic. Coming up, Premier of Ontario, Canada, Doug Ford says the controversial tariff ad will be paused after this weekend's World Series. Stay tuned for that after this break.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week. Still couldn't pay the bills. Skip meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. You know, I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay," and I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Don't wait. Call now to find out about our Medicare plan.
Why do we have to sit through so many Medicare commercials this time of year? It's endless.
Good question, Edith. I'm glad you asked. We see so many commercials this time of year because it's the only time, other than special circumstances, when Medicare recipients can change their plan for Part C. Original Medicare only covers Parts A and B, but a Medicare Advantage plan has additional benefits that Original Medicare doesn't offer.
So now's the time to fill those spaces?
That's right, Archie. And every year, there are changes to what benefits you may receive from your Part C plan. Call right now to find out what plan best suits your needs.
It's easy, easy, don't delay. Pick up the phone and call today.
Call now for your free Medicare review.
1-833-469-1754. 1-833-469-1754.